Thank you, Sona, and thank you very much for inviting us. I apologize, I'm not speaking Armenian, so Barazes. Yes, well, when I read the title of the workshop, I was very pleased. Definitively amending the Armenian constitution as an imperative, because this is something that we have been advocating for already many years. We have been working extensively on the electoral reform, but unfortunately, we could not connect the electoral reform with the constitutional reform. And going through my documents, I realized that in 2022, we already produced a paper on the amendments to the Constitution for the election-related provision of the Constitution, and that's exactly what we mentioned. Consider removing a stable majority and the second round. So definitively, I think this is the right time to start, finally, discussing about the Constitution. So the first element that I want to share with you is about the incongruity of your electoral system, because Article 89 of the Constitution is really atypical in the sense that it is attributing a bonus to the leading party or to the coalitions. But what was the purpose for this bonus system? Why in Armenia this was established? One can assume that one of the reasons was to ensure stability of the government. However, I think we can still question whether Armenia was subject to political instability before 2015. So, going back to what the Venice Commission at that time also said, is also that the stable majority provision place rather strong emphasis on the government stability rather than over proportionality. And honestly, many states can award a certain advantage to to the largest parties or to the coalitions to promote government stability through other means, in particular the formula on how we allocate seats. And I heard Harmend and Mr. Saguns, and definitively this is an area where we will be able to work. So, in addition to that, this provision was introduced in 2015 at a time where you had a mixed system, but then since then you introduced full proportional representations in 2021 with the electoral reform. And yes, you lowered the stable majority to 52%. But the very notion of the proportional representation with the bonus correspond to an electoral system that is a little bit hybrid, because on one side you have proportional system, but that on the other side you have also some majoritarian principle. So what we have is what we call the majority-minority jackpot system, where the second round is held if no party reaches 52% of the seats and no coalitions can be established. But what is interesting is even in the opinion from the Venice Commission from 2021 on the electoral system, they were seeking some clarification on how this second round can be implemented, because that's really a challenge. Because I do believe that when the system was introduced, that was not meant to be for increasing representativity, but rather than for controlling the outcome of the elections. Because what really matters in any electoral system, and scholars, everyone can have an opinion whether proportional representation, majoritarian system, mixed system are best for any country. What really matters is how you turn the vote into seats. That's really what is important and what people can understand. So here, I would like to say that the seats allocation is really what matters. Translations of the vote into seats, and how this is being done, and whether there is any distortion between the will of the people as expressed through the vote on the, for instance, on the first round or during the elections, and the actual representation. As Armand mentioned, we could see in different systems, or in Germany, level of distortion. In France, we have also this level of distortion because we have a majoritarian system. But we have this bonus, by the way, we have this bonus system in your regional settings for regional parliaments. That we have in certain regions, we have proportional representation with a bonus system. This bonus system was also first introduced in Italy. It's called Italicum. And it was partially struck down by the Constitutional Court for not being fully constitutional. And here I want just to come back also to your legislations, because you have this system in the Constitution, and then it is also more explicit, I think, in the Electoral Code, which is about the Article 96, but also Article 98, where it is said that, okay, you have this system, but then if you have a second round, if you have a coalition between the first party and the second party, then the third party can enter the race. So here it's about political decision. It's not a rule that is established for everyone based on independent criteria. For instance, as we have in France for the second round of local elections, where if you have or national elections, if you reach a threshold of 12.5% of the registered voters, you automatically join the second round. So you can end up having a second round with 2, but maybe 3 or even 4 parties. That's what we call triangular or quadrangular elections. And for those who followed the recent elections in France, you saw that we ended up having many of those triangular elections. While here, in reality, the second round is going to be a political decision, because at the end of the day, you have 1 or 2 parties that decide after the first round to join coalition, and in that case, it's a third party. So I don't know what the Constitutional Court will say about that, but in Italy, it was declared anti-constitutional. So this is one aspect. Then there is another aspect that I want to mention. That's the countries that have the bonus. We witness a highly distortive potential of majority bonus in the context of a strong party fragmentation. Those bonuses, or let's say Italicum, for instance, was introduced at a time where you had kind of a bipartisan system, where in Italy we used to have 2 major groups, but over the past 10 years we have seen the emergence of a third pole, in particular with the far right, and therefore then the system doesn't work as well as it used to work, because it creates, as mentioned by Armand, a series of distortion in the representation of the seats. So one can question whether such system is designed to ensure political stability, which is what people claim it is, or whether we can consider that this system in reality is a way to foster the predominance of a ruling party. So, and it can be seen as a all-risk insurance for the ruling party in order to control the seats in the parliament. Then I want to share another point that the Venice Commission made when they, in their opinion regarding the draft constitution. So it was already 9 years ago, but it's still very much valid. It's about that the Venice Commission recommended that we should enshrine in the Constitution only the main principle of the electoral systems and not get into the details of that system. So in reality, if we want to reform Article 89, we should just mention that the proportional representation is the system of representation of Armenia, and everything else should be left to the electoral code. So the Constitution should establish only the basic principles of an electoral system, while other details should be laid down in the code. And the Venice Commission also stressed that any electoral system should be adopted by a large consensus among political parties. Then the last point that I want to address is that the Constitution should be seen as a whole, and yes, definitively we can amend pieces of the Constitution, one article against the other one, but we should look at the interactions between the different articles. And we should also look at something that I noticed in Armenia, is that we should refrain from introducing provisions that are handpicked from other countries. We have Italy for this Italicum and this bonus, for instance, but we have Germany also for the constructive vote of no confidence, which is Article 115 of the Constitution. So Italy has a perfect bicameral system where the members of the two chambers are being elected, directly elected by the people. So the supermajority or the bonus can work in this framework. While in Armenia, we have a monocameral system, only one chamber with a proportional representation. And if we introduce, or if you keep the bonus, that's as mentioned earlier, that gives an unfair advantage to the parties that is leading the polls. We can... Germany has also a very well structured democratic tradition since 1945, with very well structured political parties, as well as an history of power sharing and coalition building at both the Länder and the federal state. I doubt that this is the case of Armenia at the moment. So once again, the context in which those provisions, constitutional provisions or electoral provisions are introduced matters as much as the provision themselves. So this is to say that a provision that works in a country, in a specific country with a specific political environment may not be working in a different country. And that's, in my opinion, that's maybe the case of Armenia. So those provisions, in particular Article 89, as it was drafted in 2015, can easily be seen as engineered constitutional tools aimed at distorting the political representation and or are restraining the ability of the legislative to control the executive. So this is making, in particular, the oversight of the parliament much less effective. So amending the electoral system, whether in the constitutions or even in the electoral code, should not be a standalone initiative, but be part of a much broader review of, for instance, constitutional provisions that are not fully aligned with international standards and good practices. Yes, Article 89, which is about the stable majority, but we can look at also Article 92, with the time frame of the snipe elections, Article 195, which is about the appointment of the EMB, election management body, or Article 105, which is about the rights of the minority. Those can be amended through legislative amendments, but we have also other provisions that can only be amended through a referendum. And that's my final point, is also it will be possible to eliminate stable majority and the second round of elections mentioned under Article 89 through a constitutional amendments voted by 2/3 of the majority in Parliament. We still have a problem because we have Article 149 of the Constitution, which mentions that the Prime Minister is appointed through the majority. And we can't, in the current context of Armenia, we can't have what we call minority governments. We need to have a majority, which may be challenging in the years ahead, because we may end up in a situation where we can have an outcome of an election where there is no party really winning, and therefore, yes, through this Article 89, they will be able to create some artificial coalitions in order to reach 52% of the votes and of the seats, but that will not necessarily reflect the will of the people. So my conclusion is, yes, we can amend, and we should, I think, amend these provisions to some extent, because that's a distortion of the proportionality of the vote. However, we have to pay attention that by doing so, we are not creating an imbalance within the Constitution, because we have other provisions that will require to be amended, and some of them, unfortunately or fortunately, can be amended only through a constitutional referendum. Thank you.
Շատ շնորհակալ եմ, պարոն